Hello everyone and welcome back to a follow-up video on the Lenovo Legion Y540 gaming laptop with the RTX 2060 graphics card. Hopefully this video works out. It's the third time I'm recording it. First time, as some of you are aware, I recorded at a bad resolution, and the second recording apparently went black after 2 minutes and only had audio from that point. So this video I'm going to try doing a little differently. I've taken some of your suggestions for benchmarks to run. I'm going to kind of go through them as screenshots that I've taken at the end of each test instead of trying to show them running in real time. I will do one of them real time just to show you how loud that fan can get. But I'm just going to show you the benchmark scores for the most part and my observations. So what I'm going to start with is Cinebench R15. So I've done a couple of tests on it, or basically I split them up into two tests. This is before undervolting. The CPU, the OpenGL, scored around 141 FPS. One thing to keep in mind with these benchmarks is they fluctuate a little bit. So we can see over here the GPU went up to about 51 degrees Celsius at its max. I believe from what I've seen, this GPU is capped or throttled at 65 degrees Celsius. So it'll start reducing its frequency once it hits 65 to keep itself at 65 or lower. So just to recap, we're at 141 FPS, not undervolted. And what I just did here, well, I'll get to that in a second. So here's what it scored for the CPU, 1293. So what I've gone ahead and done is run Cinebench undervolted again. I believe we're at 1291. Undervolted, we scored 1300. Again, this does fluctuate a bit. I've run a couple of tests here. So it doesn't seem like the undervolting did much for it, for R15 anyway. I've also ran HW info just to show you the max temperatures that we hit here. So with the undervolting, basically the max temperature we hit was 81 degrees Celsius before it started cooling itself off. If we go back to the stock mode or pre-undervolting mode, it basically hit 95 degrees before throttling itself. So the undervolting didn't help with performance too much, but it did help the laptop run cooler, which is a plus. Now for my semi-favorite benchmark, Cinebench R20. I'm going to run that so you guys can hear the CPU fan running or the laptop cooling running. Now, if you've watched the other video, you've probably heard me say a few times that I'm speaking about a foot away from the microphone. Laptop is just over 2 feet away from it. Don't know if that gives you a good reference point for sound, but it is what it is. So with OBS running, we're again hitting that 94, almost 95 degree range. Fans are kicking in. So that's as loud as they get. It's fairly loud compared to a fan barely running. But I do believe this is a little bit quieter than most laptops in its class. Something I don't think you're going to really notice much if you're into the game or if you have headphones on. Again, this is more of a stress test. You're probably not going to be running your laptop at max settings like this for prolonged periods. You might get a spike here and there, but I don't think you're actually going to be running at this setting 24/7. As you can see, the temperatures drop down below 80 fairly quickly. So this is 2946 with OBS running and an undervolted CPU. Let's jump over to what the stock laptop did, or the stock settings did. So I found that they fluctuated around 2800 to 2900 range. Sometimes you'll get a fluke and score around the 2600 range. But for the most part, you're going to be in this area under ultimate performance. You'll also see over here that the temperatures hit 95 degrees Celsius, which is where the hardware will start throttling the CPU on its own to cool off. Now, with the undervolting, CPU went to 92 degrees before the fans kicked in and started cooling. What this allowed the computer to do is run a little bit longer without throttling itself, which I would say is what got it to this score. Now again, I've said it in the last video, I've gotten up to about 3180, 3190 range, but I've been finding with these benchmarks, you're never going to get two of the same numbers in a row. So kind of take it with a grain of salt. Like, the higher the number isn't necessarily always better. It could be just a fluke run, you get a really good number, and then it might take you another 20 attempts to hit that number again. But the take home from this is the undervolting helped the CPU run a little bit cooler compared to not undervolting, and in Cinebench R20 anyway, it ended up with a better score. Moving along here, another one of the benchmarks a couple of you suggested was the Heaven. So I have run that. So after it went through its whole shebang, the 26 scenes, pre-undervolting, we scored 1471. Again, that fluctuates a little bit. And for the fun of it, I did 2 runs with the undervolting. So one of the runs that I did, I put the temperatures here. Max temperature hit was 69 degrees, so it was running fairly coolly the whole way through. We scored 1618. Average FPS was 64.2. I'm not sure why the min FPS 19.7. I believe probably when the program started, there's that split second of lag. Probably accounts for that. But so that was one run. Second run that I did, we scored 1601. Again, that score fluctuates. Take home here is you're not necessarily going to get the highest score every single time that you run these benchmarks. So we can kind of see that the CPU undervolting, the main benefit I've been seeing anyway, is CPU runs a few degrees cooler, which is good for the longevity of the laptop. In terms of performance, I think with most games these days, it's probably going to be negligible. You're not really going to notice much difference, but just knowing that the laptop will last a little bit longer is a good thing. So another benchmark that I was told to run is the Furmark with the Prime 95 running at side by side. Basically, from what I saw, Furmark is a GPU stress tester. Prime 95 is CPU stress tester. Recipe for a hot laptop. I was actually kind of surprised. This laptop basically got a warm spot in the bottom on the middle. It wasn't really the whole thing, and it really didn't burn my legs like some past laptops I've used. So I've broken this one down a little. So the Furmark, I have the GPU temps over here. You can kind of see here, it capped out at about 65 degrees Celsius, and then it would throttle itself. So you can see here the core frequency was 1065 when I ended the test after about half an hour. This starts off at around 1600 megahertz, and I saw it drop down as far as about 900 and some megahertz. So that was fluctuating kind of bit, or quite a bit. Also, like I said, it caps out at about 65 degrees Celsius before it starts throttling itself. Don't know how this stacks up with things, but I'm sure you guys can look at these and get a little bit more info off it than I can. Jumping over to what the Prime 95 did. Forgot if I mentioned it on the other one. This is pre-undervolting. So with Prime 95 running, the CPU temperatures jumped up to about 92 degrees Celsius max. They were averaging mid-70s range overall, which is, I'd say, fairly cool for a stress test. And once again, this stress test was running for about half an hour. Interestingly enough, when I ran the test again after undervolting, I left it running for close to an hour. And I noticed the laptop was a little bit warmer, because the first time I picked it up after running for half an hour without undervolting, the laptop wasn't really that warm on the bottom. After running it for the hour with the undervolting, it was fairly warm. Again, it wasn't scalding hot as some of the other reviewers have said for other laptops. And with my experience, anyway, with a few other laptops, they usually get hot in one side of the laptop, which usually can burn your thigh. Well, not burn it, but gets very uncomfortable. So I'm just going to jump over to the post-undervolting. So you can kind of see here the temperatures ran a little bit warmer. I think I would attribute that to me just running it longer in general. Again, they're still under 90 degrees, but a little bit warmer. And again, I think that's just because I ran the benchmark a lot longer than I did for the pre-undervolting. So that's basically those benchmarks there. I did purchase 3D Mark, and I ran 3 of the benchmarks on here. So I ran the Port Royal, I've run Time Spy, and I ran the Fire Strike. So I have the results here. I'm not sure how I can run or show them side by side. I did notice the Port Royal one, frame rates weren't the greatest on there, but that one runs with ray tracing. I don't think anybody's expecting the 2060 RTX card to run that at smooth frame rates. From what I've heard, the 2080 RTX barely manages to do that. So let's go ahead and open up the pre-undervolted one. It's actually kind of interesting what happened on these. So here's a bunch of information, how the GPU, CPU, frame rates, and everything were. If you guys are interested, I can post the files for these so you can download them and look at them in a bit more detail yourselves. So the graphics score is 3113. Average frames per second was 14.41. Again, I told you it wasn't really running that smoothly. Just for the fun, I'm going to click here, show you how it stacks up against other systems. So we're kind of at, I'm just going to call it the bottom. I mean, we are using the bottom end of the ray tracing graphics cards, so it's not really that surprising. Now for the drum roll, while I load it up, how do you guys think the undervolted version did? Dun dun dun. That's right. Didn't really change anything. I wouldn't really expect it to. It's not really linked to the CPU. So let's just jump over to Firestrike. I think that's the one most of you were interested in. So we scored a 14,189. We got 15,470 on the graphics score, 17,256 on the physics score. Combines to a 7519. Well, not combines. I guess they're both tests run at the same time. Again, more detailed information down here. Again, just put some comments if you want those files for downloading. Now let's just, for the fun of it, compare this, because I think we stack favorably in this test. So we are better than 73% of other people without undervolting. And I know I'm making this undervolting thing sound like the Holy Grail or something. So let's jump over here and look at that. Basically, it did nothing for this. So I'm just going to jump over to the time stock. So Time Spy on stock voltages ran at 6062. Again, some more eye gibberish. Graphics score was 5912. CPU score 7086. Now, I know I said it a couple times already previously in the video. These scores fluctuate. They're not set in stone. So you're going to see here when I open the undervolted version, we actually scored higher overall, but our CPU score was a little bit lower. Again, you can't really expect it to benchmark the same every single time. Now on Time Spy, I believe this one's a little bit newer benchmark compared to the Fire one. So we scored 51% better than other people. We're scoring better than most gaming laptops, which is cool. I don't know if you guys really want to see anything else on here. Actually, one thing I found interesting is the graphics driver is not approved on here, so I don't know what Lenovo's done with their version of the drivers, but that's what 3D Mark says. So overall thoughts and just using this, it's honestly a pretty smooth laptop. You're definitely not going to crush a 2080 Ti. I wouldn't expect that. A 2080 Ti laptop's also going to cost almost double the price of this one. My thoughts on the undervolting. I think it's something decent that you should do just because it runs a little bit cooler. A cooler laptop means a longer living laptop in general. I have run some of the games that you guys have suggested, like Dauntless, Counter-Strike Go, and a few others. This laptop has no problem running them. Dauntless runs at a steady 60 frames per second. Counter-Strike Go on Ultra runs around 60 plus frames per second. Even Civilizations, which I've tried doing this test a couple times, averages fairly well. And just for the fun of it, I'm going to run it here.
information rests in the palm of your hand, and networks for instantaneous communication span the globe. Yet a unified vision of our future has never been built. We compete in technology, culture, and politics. We have deadly weapons that could destroy our planet. Lead us carefully, but boldly, and build a global community that can stand for years to come. And so it is upon your broad shoulders, Theodore Roosevelt, to charge forth and...
Alrighty, so this is the graphics test running up. For those of you who don't know, Civilization 6 is a fairly CPU intensive game when it uses AIs. So, graphics-wise, we ran pretty well. 13.6 milliseconds for the average frame time. 99th percentile goes up to 20.46. So if I am doing my math right, we score in the top 1% for benchmark results on Civilization 6. Now, we'll just do the AI one since we're here.
A world of information rests in the palm of your hand, and networks for instantaneous communication span the globe. Yet a unified vision of our future has never been built. We compete in technology, culture, and politics. We have deadly weapons that could destroy our planet.
So let's see how good this AI thinks. Average turn time, 7.68 seconds. Don't know how good that is, but fairly quick. And our max temp was 82 degrees Celsius. But average temp stayed fairly low. So that's a pretty good thing here. So anyway, I know I've ran on a couple of points. Apologize for that. But if you guys have any other questions or any other tests you'd like me to run in the meantime, before I do another recording, just leave them in the comments section and I'll try to do my best to answer them. But again, overall, I do like the laptop so far. Runs great, looks great, and it does not burn my thigh. All bonuses.